had summer. Sleepy and doji all wrapped up in one. Great.
Actually, I don't. I appreciate that.
Thanksgiving lunch.
So what do you think of that Harley property that's coming up, moving it to us?
Well, obviously not.
Well, why we do it? There might be some reason.
And say what's wrong with what?
I am.
That's my
They
first.
want to get 6 more lots in.
Yeah,
Onto
that's hardly the motivation, right? I mean,
I know that is.
Here's the annual scene and then the roots of
I'm
knowledge.
going to this.
Okay.
You're doing the same thing. You're gonna serve quick and then run.
Yeah,
Norm asked me to go see the governor.
Norm did.
Yeah.
We would like to welcome everyone out to our city council session this evening, and would like to call this meeting to order. We're going to begin by having a prayer by Noel Thomas, after which we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance by Glory Thomas.
Our dear kind Father, we're so grateful for all of our blessings. We ask Thee to bless us as a city to be inspired to do the things that Thou would have us do and that would help our city become the best that it can be. We're grateful for Thy guidance in all things. And we say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Will the audience please rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance with me? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Noel and Glory. We would first like to approve the minutes of our city council meeting of October the 25th, 2016. Is there a motion to do so?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we'd like to go to upcoming events. We have, first of all, our Miss Orem Outstanding Teen Kindness Week. We had a kickoff last night at the Senior Citizen Center, which was excellent, and we very much appreciate Glory Thomas and what she's doing to lead out on that. One of the things that they're trying to do is a book drive for kids on the move, and we have places here within the City Hall that you can drop off books for that charity. So we again appreciate what she's doing. You can go to kindness.orem.org for information on the daily events. On November the 16th, we have the ribbon cutting at 10 a.m. for AT&T at University Place. We also have a UVU basketball opening game. That will be at 6:30 p.m. We encourage everyone to attend. On the 18th, we have the Utah Transportation Commission public meeting at 8:30 a.m. at Eagle Mountain City Council Chamber. We also have the Orem Senior Friendship Center where the City Council will be helping to serve Thanksgiving lunch, 11:30 a.m. That evening, there's also the reception at the UVU Library from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. For the Roots of Knowledge, the stained glass windows that they're putting in the library. Those are beautiful. I went over to Thanksgiving Point and watched them actually produce those stained glass windows and the efforts that they have to go through to do it. The coloring on there is actually mixed glass, crushed glass that they make into a paste, and then they bake it onto the glass, and then they put it onto the frame, and they make a stained glass leaded display, and it's beautiful. And it's going to stretch for, I think, like 120 feet around the part of the library there that is a reception area. So would encourage everyone who would like to be there. On the 21st of November, we have our lights on at the City of Orem at 6 p.m. here. And on December the 10th, there's a live nativity activity from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Walker Sanderson Funeral Home. So we would like to go on. I don't believe there's any appointments to boards or commissions. And we would like to go to a proclamation for Kindness Week. I would like to read this. Whereas any day, week, or month is a good time to remind all of us of the need to remember that respect, dignity, compassion, and humility are 4 essential ingredients in the creation and maintenance of a civilized society. Whereas in the heart of all of us lies the idea that we hold the power of kindness within us. And whereas by knowing, understanding, and actually using this power, we have the ability to send out a positive ripple that may travel for miles. And whereas no one, no matter how young or how small, is too little to make a difference in our community and our world, and whereas through random acts of kindness, we can promote healthy behaviors and positive dynamics within our community. And whereas we seek to cultivate caring, kindness, and compassion within our community through our youth by teaching them to make a difference through random acts of kindness. Now, therefore, I, Richard F. Brunts, Jr., Mayor of the City of Orem, Utah, do hereby urge the citizens of our community to join us in establishing and observing the week of November 14th through November 21st, 2016 as Kindness Week in the City of Orem, and encourage all citizens of our community to join us in establishing and observing a week of kindness. Certainly this is a wonderful event, and this is a wonderful proclamation. I would like to take a vote on that. Would someone offer a motion?
I'd like to make the motion.
Okay.
That we accept this proclamation.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. If you can hand that to Donna. We would now like to entertain a report from the Metropolitan Water Board. Neil Winterden, I think if you'd like to come up and be the presenter.
Happy to meet with you tonight, Mayor and Council. Glad you invited us.
Good to have you here.
I'm Jack Jones, the Metropolitan Water Board. And the Metropolitan Water District of Orem is doing very well, accomplishing a lot. And it's mainly due to a great board of directors that we have. And I'd like to introduce the ones who are with us and have them stand.
Sure.
Russ Brown, who's with us. Fidel Gilman. Is that all? I think and I don't see any others. I guess they didn't make it. But I'd like to also introduce Neil Winterton, who's the manager for our board, and Ruth Ann Ivy, our secretary, who's been there 20 years, serving with the Metropolitan Water District. I thought tonight I'd take just a minute and review some of the things the Metropolitan Water District has accomplished. In 1935, the wise Orem City Council created the Metropolitan Water District of Orem, and I've thought often since then, about them since. What a great move they made in doing that. And over the last 80 years, the charge that they gave the Metropolitan Water Board was to acquire and develop water for the city for Orem City. And over the last 80 years, thanks to many, many great men who have served prior to us in acquiring water, and with the board of directors we have now still acquiring water, we've been able to purchase a little over 3,000 shares of water stock from irrigation companies, and that's a lot of water. It's a lot of water, and we now are able. We've entered into an agreement with the Central Utah Water Conservancy District, Metro has, and in that agreement, one of the things that it clarifies is that they will treat any and all water that Metropolitan Water District wants treated. So with that, with our many, many gallons of water we have, with the city's wells and springs, we have plenty of water for now and for the future. And I'm very pleased to report that. Now with that agreement, the city uses their wells and springs and then supplements whatever they need with treated water through the treatment plant, which is how much, about 60%.
Yeah.
That water that the Metro provides is about 60% of Orem's water that is used in Orem. So I feel very good about that. And we have a very great relationship with the Metropolitan Water Board and the city, particularly the staff that we work with. And through their great effort, through the Public Works and the Water Division especially, they have accomplished and created the best water system we have in the state, if not the best, one of the very best, and the best drinking water. And I'm very proud of them for what they've done. I'd like to turn some time over to Neil to talk about a few things.
Thank you. Yes, it's been an honor and a pleasure to serve as the manager of the Metropolitan Water District of Orem. There's, on occasion, a paid manager that is not a city employee. I am, as part of my responsibilities, not a paid manager through the Metropolitan Water Board, but through my duties as an employee and the trust that the board has bestowed upon me have given me that opportunity, and it's a pleasure. I think I bring the median age down about a year, so that's good. I say that only because they're very wise and they have a lot of history in Orem. Jack was just telling me about his opportunity he had to serve on the city council when this building was decided to be built. And I know you guys went on a tour today to consider the future of this building and this site. So pick his brain about the time he had and some of the challenges then. This year was a little bit interesting because I spoke a little about how the adjudication process happened for the city. The wells are in the city's name, and the adjudication process, which is the state looking and keeping their books in order, went through and kept the city's water rights whole. Well, they went through and looked at all of the canal companies. There are a few different canal companies in Orem, and one of those was subject to adjudication. A couple of them were, but we had a significant interest in the Provo Bench Canal and Irrigation Company this year. We are the major stockholder, almost owning half of that, and that was under review by the state. Well, some good planning years ago and some good planning as of late with staff and coordinating the use of that. We are told, we haven't got the final review and the final paperwork back, but we are told that that right of the canal company, which protects not only the city, but also all the backyard irrigators, that right will remain whole. And that is actually quite a good thing, given the potential that could have happened. Russ Brown here filled out the application that made that, I'm not going to say totally possible, but it gave the state good reason to keep the right as it is whole, even if some of those shares haven't been used in the past little bit. So that was very wise that happened and occurred, and it protected not just the city, but all those within the city. So I can't emphasize enough what that really means without going into the details, but it's very significant. But as Mr. Jones said, the water situation in Orem is positive due to those who served in the past and those who presently serve and give a lot of time and energy and effort into that. And that concludes my report.
Well, I just would like to say I thank the Metropolitan Water Board. I thank all those involved for protecting and watching out over our water. It's something that I think we take for granted. Unfortunately, we shouldn't take for granted, and we should have a lot of gratitude for the excellent water that we have here. So thank you to all of you on the board and for the help you've given us. So appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. We now would like to turn some time over for a report from the Arts Council. Shar Crozier is going to bring the Arts Council board up, and we'll have the report.
My council didn't actually follow me up, but they're here.
Okay.
Back there. Okay, I'm Cassandra Barney. I am the chair of the council. Do you guys want to come up?
Come on up.
Do they want to come up? Since they have chairs now, it'll be awkward if they don't, really. I'm Cassandra Barney. We've given each of you guys a roster that will actually tell you who these people are if you're interested or there's someone you don't know. And also on this, behind the roster, this last week, each of the council members were asked what they thought was important as far as arts in our community. And we have listed those on here. Also, we have left a space for you to make notes or tell us which things you think are important, because that would be very helpful for us if we could know what you guys are thinking. So, and then we have a presentation here, which I will now share with you. All right. And how do I go to the next thing? Anybody? Anyone? Oh, swipe it? Oh, okay. Yes, we do. All right. All right. First, I'm going to tell you about the Orem Stories project. Before starting this project, we had discussed in one of our council meetings what makes Orem unique, and the answer was, well, not a whole lot. We don't have a rooftop for a concert, nor do we have buildings that we can gentrify and create an artist studio space. We don't have any famous landmarks or monuments, but what we do have are stories, our own stories. The idea for this came from the discussions about, isn't it interesting that you can have a total stranger and you can learn about them and realize, oh, you have more in common than you thought, or the lady that annoys you at the counter because she her English is, but when you learn about the sacrifices she might have made or her story of why she's here in Orem, then you can learn to love people. And so when we tell our stories, we learn that we're more the same than different. And art is a way for us to connect those stories. We've talked about how wonderful it would be to share the stories of the past and the present, portraits and members of our community, and how sharing those stories can bridge cultural gaps, religious, ethnic, and economic diversities, and help us to all become more tolerant of the people in our community. It's about inclusion. So 3 years ago, we had our first art show that was called the Orem Stories Project. And we invited local artists, and it was mostly students, to submit artworks about either a citizen in the community or a portrait of one of their family members or someone who lived here, and write about it. We had an amazing amount of participation. And then we had our art opening hosted by the Orem Library, where we had visiting artists and to help teach and work with the students who had questions, and they got to show off their artwork. And it was wonderful because they seemed to really get something out of that. So we've done this for 3 years. This last year, Mayor Brunst actually modeled for some of our participating artists.
In my suit, by the way.
You looked good.
Yeah.
You looked good.
Okay.
And I think that was a good way of connecting with the people. Also, we had some ballerinas who also modeled, and some artists there, professional artists that they could work with. So that is a really fun project that we've been working on. Another thing, this is just I'm starting this off with some of the things we've accomplished this year. We also had an animation workshop taught by some BYU students, and it has to be a smaller group because they need computers and all that business, but first attempt went pretty well. We did Play in a Day, where anyone in Orem is invited to come out, and they create a play in the day and get to work with professional acting people. We had our concert series in the park, where we worked with the stage at the city center, and we were in charge of Summerfest performances, organizing and facilitating all of that and getting that going. Gosh, it seems like we did a lot more when you put it all in one place. Now let's talk about our goals for 2017. We've talked about, in our community, we have schools, businesses, events, and individuals, and we would love to help to support, advise, promote, strengthen, recognize, and connect these members of our community. I'm going to come back to this at the end, actually. We are interested in adding art elements to other playgrounds. We're so impressed with the All Together playground. We're interested in more public art installations, using local artists, maybe students, and possibly murals, and finding projects to help set the arts district apart. Also working with the bigger companies and some of the bigger things. We have high-tech installation areas and things in our community. And increasing and improving the utilization of communication channels is something we are always challenged by with our committee, and making it people more aware of the things that are available to them. And we are interested in getting more grants and getting better at our grant proposals, so we have some money to work with, because that's always challenging. We encourage you all to attend as many art events as possible. We know that you're busy, but it really is wonderful when the people in our community who are working so hard to do these things are supported with our council and our arts council. We're trying to make that one of our goals too. Okay, about the 100th year anniversary. We've considered using this Orem Stories project as a possible, theme, and for this celebration. And what I've imagined personally, I was thinking, is, things like the young interviewing the older members of our community, and then producing artworks of them and telling their stories. We thought about mobile art galleries throughout the community, and installations where Orem citizens could sign their names, sculptures of our city founders. I visited the our little Orem History Museum over here by the Sarah. It was fantastic. And the excited volunteers who worked there, who were so eager to tell the stories, and it was just made me teary. It was wonderful. And I thought, what a neat thing if we could take that into the city. it would be neat if we had neighbors honoring neighbors, because I think we can all think of someone that we could tell their story, and wouldn't that be a neat thing to share? I've imagined banners written on platforms or little stages that say, "Let me tell you my story," so that we have impromptu stories being told. Also, let's see, flags on light posts, we've done that sort of thing, but wouldn't it be neat if those were stories or portraits of some of our, historical Orem members or current Orem members that like somebody's mom, We could have stories on walking paths and contests for finding and creating artworks and exploring, like this year, like we thought about for the Orem Stories Project, people who take care of us, like our law enforcement and our hospital people, just people who take care of us and that sort of thing. So, in closing, we want to say that art is a tool for changing individuals as well as communities, and it's not just something for the privileged, but it's an inclusive thing that could be really great for our community and give us an identity. And we are ready to support what your needs are too as a council, so let us know. So if you have any notes, please write them on here and share them with us, okay?
Well, thank you. Thank you, Cassandra, and thank you to the Arts Council. And I just want to say, as mayor, I appreciate what you do. I appreciate the arts that we have within our city. I think that's a very refining influence. I think it's a real help to us as a community to come together and bring a sense of community. So thank you very much. I wanted to ask Debbie if she had any comments.
I used to be on this council previous to running for city council, and I'm just amazed at the great things you've done. I'm really pleased with your animation class that you taught, because that is very popular. And just as a special thanks for all those you who painted on the Altogether Playground. I know that Cassandra did, and your father, Jim Christensen, came out and made us a wonderful clock. And I'm sure others also came to do some sort of art. So thank you so much. And I'd love to see more parks with some themes and some great things. So we look to you as we plan the Arts District. We look for the great things, and we thank you very much for your service.
Councilmember Lentz would like to make a comment as well.
And thank you so much for everything that all you do. And I realize it's a volunteer position and sometimes an unappreciated position in some cases, but thank you for all the time and effort you put into it. I just had a question for, and if a couple of you have something to add, feel free to jump in, but a citizen in Orem asked me about a week or two ago about the CARE program, and their comment was essentially, wouldn't the city be able to find that money from somewhere else for arts and recreation? Wouldn't it just come out of the general fund? So aren't we just, kind of shifting the money? And my response was essentially, well, that depends. Are you seeing incremental improvements in additional investment in our recreation programs improving, our arts programs improving? And over the last decade, would you be able to say, we have seen a marked improvement in arts programs and investment in our arts culture here in Orem?
Charlene, what do you want to say about that?
Shar is right behind you over there.
Well, I will tell you that working with this group is, they're an impressive group, and their talent is daunting almost. But one of the biggest challenges that this group and every other arts organization in the state faces is funding. Because as much as we all want to rely on the donations of others and think that people will step up and pay, it is a continual cycle of trying to raise money, and it's really a challenge. These folks are looking at ways to tap into more funding that they would have access to. Right now they don't currently have access to CARE funding, and they need to look for other options other than the limited funds that they have to do larger projects and make a larger impact in the arts district. So while I appreciate everyone's good ideas in terms of funding the arts, I think the CARE tax is a great resource, because if you look at how little it costs each one of us to participate in something that benefits the whole community, and it benefits everyone from our youth to our seniors and everyone in between, and it really offers a lot both in terms of recreation and in arts for participation, and for growth and for talent development. And that's all different types of talents. I think that it has really been one of the outstanding programs, and I have worked with the CARE program directly before, and I've been so pleased that Orem residents have come forward to support that, because they do realize that this community needs to offer opportunities to young people, to old people, to families, everyone in between, and they need to find a way to fund it. So I think that the CARE program is really a shining example of how Orem invests in its citizenry, and I'm just really proud of that program and those who've worked to bring it to pass.
Thank you very much. We love what CARE does, and it's produced great results in our city. We just had a survey where there was a 76% rate of satisfaction over the quality of the arts within our city. So we appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll now go down to our personal appearance time. We ask that anyone who would like to come and speak, that they hold their comments to 3 minutes and that they give us their name and address. So first we'll hear from Paul Jones and then from Michael.
Hey, this is the first time I've done this, so I might need some water. So I'm
You're fine.
a bit nervous. Oops. Okay. That's okay. Anyways, I'm here because I'd like to thank the mayor and the city council for an opportunity for me to stand here and speak to you about something that's really important to me and a lot of people, and that's the issue of religious freedom here in this country. And currently, right now, for the past 7 years, our current government has done everything that they can to harshly punish and criticize and condemn those who speak up for religious liberty. Personally, I think that's wrong, but there is a stumbling block that I've talked to various people in government, and they said, we're sorry, you can't express your religious freedom outside your home. You can't put it on the city property here. And I said, why? They said, because of the Establishment Clause. Now, the Establishment Clause, as far as I know it, is, well, actually, it's illegal and unconstitutional because the Constitution, the First Amendment, says that the government, city, state, and federal are not allowed to endorse a particular religion, and that the government can't interfere or mandate how we as citizens can express our religious beliefs. And we've seen examples where a baker, a photographer, who express their objection to things that go against their religion. The government has stepped in, ordered, mandated, and forced a baker to pay for a tolerance class out of his own pocket. And I think that's wrong too, but the First Amendment is very, very clear that no government is to infringe on the religious practices, and, getting close. The United States government has endorsed and acknowledged religion as part of government. It's on all of our coins, all of our dollar bills. We open this session with a prayer. And every session in Congress opens with a prayer. And so I'm not sure why Establishment Clause trumps over religious liberty and the First Amendment. So in closing, I would wish and hope that that the city would consider abolishing and repealing the Establishment Clause as due to the rights of the First Amendment, and that we honor that, and that we should be able to put things religious on our things which promotes goodness and kindness and not hate. So.
Okay, timed it perfectly. Thank you.
And I didn't use my water.
We'll now allow Michael to come up.
Good evening, council members, and thank you for your time. My name is Michael Uliberry, and I am with Utah Valley University on our Political Action Committee team. We do numerous things here on the campus, but I only want to inform you here of two things tonight, this evening. The first, as you know, is there is a lot of turmoil and or heated emotions after the elections of the results. We wanted to be very clear in standing with President Holland and all the students that Utah Valley University is absolutely committed, as the Mayor said earlier with the Kindness Week, to making sure we provide a safe environment that is diverse and most importantly inclusive and safe for all. And any way that we can be able to further partner that relationship with one another, we're here to make that happen. On the second note of business, thank you very much, Mayor Burnt, for being able to go and see the roots of knowledge and acknowledging that, because if you saw, this is on each of your desks. I would like to personally invite you on this Friday to our opening reception, because this is not only a momentous fact for UVU, but here for the city of Orem, for all that this actual art has been accomplished. Being that the Arts Council is here and we just talked about things that can set us out and be more unique and more distinct. You know, this art project of stained art glass is actually 10 feet by 200 feet and will be the largest stained glass mural here in the city of Orem and possibly in the whole county. Not only that, but this stained glass mural has had over 350 students who participated in it through UVU, again showing our diversity and our promise to engagement and inclusion, along with 26 different artists, scholars within the community and over 40 different artists who all put this together. President Holland and Tom Holdman are the main two who have been seeing this through the entire way. Tom Holdman is a renowned, world-renowned glass artist with numerous works in a lot of the temples of multiple different religions throughout the world. President Holland, as we all know, is a very, very established member in our community for all that he does within. And both of them have been working hard for over 12 years to make this possible. This is also, if you guys have seen in the news, we traveled to New York City to make a presentation over there as to what we're doing here in Orem to support the arts and set ourselves out and be different. Even more than that, it's actually already gone international and was presented to the Arts Council at Oxford to tell them about what we're doing that separates us, that's different. What makes it so unique is it has the entire history of knowledge and the history of human development in this mural. It's been coined as the most attention-grabbing summary of the history of knowledge and the history of the world that has ever been created. Again, it's our mural is being, our opening reception is this Friday from 5:30 to 7:30 at the UVU library. And I personally invite everybody on the city council, and not just the city council, but the arts council and all the members of the community as well to come on out to this momentous historic occasion. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it. We'll now move on to consent items. I don't believe that there are any. So we will go to our scheduled items, the first one being a public hearing. This is an ordinance amending section 22-6-9D3 of the Orem City Code to increase the permitted number of residents in a sober living home from 6 to 8, and our presenter is Steve Earle.
Do you have your slides? Okay. Thank you, Mayor. We're proposing, as you mentioned, to increase the occupancy allowed in sober living homes from the current 6 residents to 8 residents. And there are a number of reasons why we think this is a good idea. First of all, I think there's an interest on everyone's part, both the city and sober living home operators, to strike a balance between a number of occupants that will allow sober living homes to be financially viable and therapeutically effective, but at the same time to fit in residential neighborhoods and not have a number that is so great that they're not really residential in nature anymore. And so one of the concerns that we've had in the past, or that we've seen in some other places, is that when certain cities have not followed the Fair Housing Act, and just to recap what you probably already know, the Fair Housing Act requires the city to allow group homes for the disabled, including people who are recovering from addictions, in any residential neighborhood. And in some cases in cities in Utah and other states, when the cities haven't followed the requirements of the Fair Housing Act and they haven't allowed these group homes to go in, what's often happened is that they end up with a result that's much worse or more detrimental or doesn't fit in as well as if they had followed the requirements of the Fair Housing Act. And we've seen, for example, in Draper, there was a case where
They didn't follow the law as well as they ought to have, and they ended up with a situation where the court required them to take 24 residents in a single-family home in a residential neighborhood. Another situation in West Valley City, this was back in the year 2000, they had a situation where they were required to take 15 in a residential neighborhood, and that's again because they didn't follow the law. And so we are trying to amend the ordinance now to realize a situation where we are in a more defensible position in terms of what we can do in the event that we're challenged, in the event that somebody wants to come in and have a high number of residents. For example, if somebody wanted to come in and ask for a reasonable accommodation to take 20 occupants, that's a number that we would probably think doesn't really fit into a residential zone. It would change the character of a neighborhood. But in order to do that, if somebody wanted to press us on that and challenge us legally, we would have to be able to establish that that number is not necessary to be financially viable or therapeutically effective. And so in order to do that, I think we need to be in a position where our ordinance right now allows a number of occupants where the vast majority of sober living homes in the city can be financially viable. And the reason this issue came up is that a couple months ago we received an application for by a sober living home operator to have for a reasonable accommodation to go from 6 residents to 8. And their contention was that their homes couldn't be financially viable at 6, and so they wanted to go to 8. Well, part of the concern on our part is, well, what if somebody makes the contention that they need 10 or they need 12 or they need 15 or 20 to be financially viable? And obviously that's a situation we probably don't want to get into because of it changing the character of a neighborhood, not fitting in with the residential character of a neighborhood. And so one of the kind of outstanding legal issues that's out there right now is when you have to determine financial viability, is it based on generally in the city that you need, say, 8 to be financially viable generally in the city, or does it depend specifically on the type of home or the location of the home or the cost of the home? So, for example, if you had a home in an expensive area of the city that was $1 million home, you know, an operator could potentially claim that, hey, we need 16 or we need 18 or 20 to make this financially viable. And one of the things that I'm hoping to do is to put ourselves in a position where we can make the legal argument that you don't look at the financial viability of the specific home, but you look at generally in the city, what does it take in order to be financially viable? And, you know, the same would work on the lower end of the spectrum, too. If you had, you know, a very low priced home, you might argue that, well, you only need 2 or 3 to make that financially viable. So we're trying to find a number where you could say that, yeah, that's a number that will be financially viable in most areas of the city, or certainly the average location in the city. And we think that 8 is a number that does that. We think there's also some benefits to the residents of sober living homes. I think that the operators of sober living homes will tell you that the more residents they have, that the more therapeutically effective their homes become, because the key aspect, as I've been told, of getting clients or residents to stay sober is the mutual support network. And the more individuals that you have to participate in that and to lend support to one another, typically the better results you're going to have. And I think you probably have a case of diminishing returns at some point, but probably I think that a lot of operators would tell you that 8 is probably a really good number where you're going to have that support that works really well. In addition to that, I think that, as I mentioned in the staff report, having 2 additional residents is going to help the operators financially. There's no question about that. But I think that the hope is that will also trickle down and benefit the residents themselves by allowing the operators to provide greater or better staffing, better services, whether that be in terms of, you know, better counseling, better transportation options, furnishings, you know, whatever, living amenities and things like that. So we think that it will be beneficial in that regard as well. So basically, we think that this is a win-win. We think it's a win for the sober living home operators. It'll make them better operators. We think it'll be a win for the city as well, because it will put the city in a better legal position to defend any challenges that might come to us or any requests for a number of occupants that we really don't think would fit into a typical residential neighborhood. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to address those.
Any questions from the council? Councilmember C-SPAN.
Thank you. Just so currently the ordinance allows for 6. Depending on the nature of the facility, do we have many requests for less than 6?
Do we have requests for sober living homes that are less than 6?
Yeah, I mean, just from where you say up to 8.
Yeah, sometimes we do actually, and we have some situations that I'm aware of where people want to say only have 3 residents, and in that case we tell them you don't even need a license for a sober living home because anybody can have 3 unrelated adults in a home, and some operators, I guess, have chosen to go that route and not be subject then to the city's regulations for sober living homes.
So anything above 3 then would require some type of regulation. Is that typically coming through the state?
Well, what happens, first of all, is if you go above 3, then you have to come in and get a city business license to do that, and then you're subject to the city's sober living home ordinance. And there's a number of requirements there that I'd be happy to kind of go over if you're interested. But in addition to that, they're required to get a state license as well.
Is that so if you only have 3 in the home, are you required to get a state license to operate a sober living facility?
That's a good question. I'm not sure what the state would say about that. So I don't know, quite honestly. We don't require them to get a city license in that case.
If it's less than 3, but if you require a city license greater than 3, do we also, as part of the requirement, are we also checking for a state license as well?
Yeah, that's part of the requirements is they have to get
so those
state
kind of go together to say in order that it doesn't 8 is not the minimum now. It's the maximum. It could be less than that.
Correct.
On the circumstance.
Correct.
And tied with the city regulation is also state requirements for licensing through the. And are they the ones that manage the health care provision in terms of meeting certain requirements from the state for the quality of care?
Well, when you say quality of care, I guess you're talking about staffing, supervision and things like that. The cities, to the extent that such supervision is required, that would be by the state because the city does not require supervision or staffing. It's interesting that you asked that question because recently the state has started enforcing some provisions like that for supervision, minimum space requirements, minimum number of bathrooms and things like that. And they're actually being challenged legally by some sober living home operators claiming that those regulations violate the Fair Housing Act. They're basically, it's gone to district court, and the last I heard is the district court judge, stopped them from the state from enforcing those while, pending the resolution of that lawsuit. I don't think that's been fully resolved yet. But in other words, the state is trying to regulate them, those aspects that you just mentioned.
And then part of our requirement, at least to maintain safety in the neighborhood or alleviate the concerns of neighbors, is that they do have to go through certain testing because as long as they're sober, then they qualify for the housing. The minute they are no longer sober or are utilizing drugs in any way, then they're no longer allowed to live in these facilities based on our requirements.
Yeah, that's right. The Fair Housing Act only protects covering addicts who are not current users. So if you're a current user, you don't have the protection of the Fair Housing Act and you don't have the right to be in a sober living home. And so, one of the things we have in our ordinance is that you've got to be clean for at least 30 days before you can come into a sober living home to begin with. And then if you ever use, you have to be kicked out immediately and you have to be tested at least twice a week. So again, that's part of our effort to make sure that, these homes are being operated in the way they're supposed to be and that they don't end up just being a place where a lot of users are congregating, essentially.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Luray.
I was just wondering, some of our neighboring cities, do they have sober homes? And if so, can you give me an example of like Provo? Would they have similar 6 or 8? Have you looked up any of our neighbors and what they allow?
Yeah. Basically, I would venture to say that most every significant community, or the vast majority of the significant communities in our state are going to have sober living homes. There's been a number of pretty well publicized incidents where, and I was just looking at some earlier this afternoon, for example, in Draper and in Eagle Mountain and in Highland, where they went through this process, and quite honestly, they didn't have the regulatory mechanism in place that we do, and so they had operators come in and want to go into those locations, and they honestly just didn't know how to deal with it, and often what happens is they deny it initially, and then the operator asks for a reasonable accommodation to allow them to go in, and then typically what happens is that there's a huge blow up. The neighborhood goes crazy. They have all kinds of public opposition to it. They end up denying it. They end up either getting sued or being threatened to be sued, and then they end up either caving or they end up losing in a lawsuit. That's the pattern that typically happens. There's a fairly, as far as the ordinances of other cities, there's a pretty significant diversity. Some cities will outright say that, yeah, you can have 8 residents, for example, in a group home. Others don't have any provision for group homes at all, interestingly enough. And what they simply say is that you're allowed to have the number of unrelated people that your ordinance allows, whether that's 3 or 4 or whatever. And so what that does is that requires an operator that wants to go into that city to make an application for a reasonable accommodation. And then they have to go through that whole process where there's the public opposition, but ultimately they have to let them go in. And then they don't have any regulations in place to govern them as well. So there's that approach, and then there's the approach that we've taken, which I think is the much better approach, where we allow them, we make them permitted, but we have the regulations in place to ensure to the greatest extent possible that they're going to be effective, they're going to be run the way they're supposed to, and they're not going to be a threat to the neighborhood.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember McDonald.
Steve, I think there are no doubt some residents here who may have a sober home in their area and don't want to see it go from 6 to 8. I don't know if you can provide us much assurance that it's not a slippery slope. First we go from 6 to 8, and in a year we go to 10 or 12, because it seems like we cannot forbid these type of homes. I think you ought to clarify that statement, if you will. We need to allow them to be here. But can we really put any defensible maximum on it that we can support and say, once we go to 8, we know the problems are behind us, any more than at 6 or 10 or 12?
Unfortunately, the case law is not clearly enough defined that anybody can give that kind of a guarantee. What I can tell you is looking from the cases, and interesting, that's not just case law, but it's Department of Justice enforcement actions. The Department of Justice gets involved in these situations a lot of times, and they end up working out settlement agreements with city. And I've seen many of these where cities have not allowed sober living homes to go in, and they've come in and said, you basically have to allow 8 or 9 residents, in these homes. And not only that, you've got to pay a civil penalty, you've got to pay monetary damages, you've got to pay attorney's fees, and plus your city council and planning commission have to go to training on Fair Housing Act. They come down pretty hard. And in the case law as well, it's kind of the same situation. And the reason I come up with 8 is that seems to be a number that across the board seems to be pretty defensible. So if the city allows 8 at the outset, that seems, again, to be a number that holds up. And quite honestly, if you allow an operator to have 8, a number where they can make it work financially, they're less likely to come in back and challenge you as well. So I think you get 2 benefits. You get a less likelihood that an operator is going to come back and sue you, and then if you do get sued, you're in a much better legal position to defend that number. And again, the problem is, like I mentioned in the cases I mentioned with Draper and West Valley, those cities were trying to basically not allow them to come in at all. If they'd allowed 8, or a number like that was reasonable, they might have ended up with that result. But because they didn't allow anything, they ended up with 15 or 24. So that's why I say if a city is not following the law to begin with and allowing a number that's reasonable and adequate to make them financially viable, they often end up with a situation that's worse, and that doesn't really fit in with the neighborhood. So,
Follow-on question: do we disclose? Do we know how many sober living homes we have in our community?
we do. I think Jason's got that map here, and that shows the location of our existing homes here.
Thank you.
So it looks like 7. Okay, Councilmember Spencer.
So, Steve, we're asking to allow 8 in sober living homes. But can you talk a little bit about the number that's allowed in other group homes, and maybe give that distinction of what that entails, meaning, assisted living for the elderly and stuff like that. So maybe that can go.
Yeah, and that's another reason why we're proposing to move sober living homes to 8, is because all of our other group homes, in residential neighborhoods, allow 8 occupants right now. So we're talking about, other homes for the disabled, whether that be physical disabilities, whether that be mental disabilities, homes for the elderly, homes for juveniles, things like that. We're currently at 8. So this would basically put us at the same level that we have for the other group homes in the city.
Thank you.
Councilmember Sumner.
Yeah, Steve, thank you. We've talked about other communities, but did you give us a number of what Provo and Linden allow, or what their ordinance is, or kind of where it's at?
In terms of what the numbers of residents they allow? The last time I checked Provo, they don't actually state a number that you can have. They treat them on a case-by-case basis. So in other words, they make if somebody wants to go into Provo, they have to submit an application for a reasonable accommodation, and then they evaluate what number is appropriate for that location based on that individual application. So they don't have, last time I checked, they don't have a set number that they will. And the problem with that, and I'll just to emphasize this again, and why I think this is a bad approach, is that what happens when they get somebody who comes in with $1 million home? If you're evaluating them on a home-by-home basis, you're basically acknowledging that we're going to determine the number of residents that are appropriate in that home based on what you have to make that home financially viable. So if I've got $1 million home, I might be asking for 15 or 20 occupants or residents, and you might have to grant it to me. And so that's why I think it's a much better approach to say everybody, no matter the size of your home, gets 8. And it doesn't matter if you're a 2-bedroom home or if you're a 12-bedroom home. That's what you're limited at. So, and then the other disadvantage again, and there's other cities besides Provo that do it this way, is again, when you're trying to go through these on a case-by-case basis, you have to fight the battle every time. And you have to go through all the public opposition and trying to explain that even though our ordinance doesn't allow this, we still have to let them do it. And that just doesn't usually go over very well. So that's the situation in Provo as far as I know.
Do you know what Linden does? And do you know, as far as Provo goes, do you know how many they have, the maximum they have in a home? If it's loose like that?
Yeah, I don't know the max. I don't know how many sober living homes they have in Provo or the maximum number. But what I can tell you is, besides the numbers that I gave you for the one home that we had the court case on with the 15 in West Valley and the 24 in Draper, I've seen a number of other cases and newspaper articles that are describing settlements where, places like Bluffdale, they've allowed homes with 12 or 13. I mean, it's common to see that other cities have had to allow basically 12 or 13, 10. Those kinds of numbers are very common to see.
Okay. You mentioned the occupants are tested twice a week,
right?
And who does that testing? And is there some kind of accountability to that, or?
Yeah, as far as to who does the testing, we don't mandate who does that, whether the operator is able to administer those tests themselves or whether they want to send somebody to a lab of some sort. I think that I don't know if I can say all, but I know a lot of the homes have taken residents to a lab, an independent lab, to have that kind of testing done. But that's not required that they do that.
So we know, is the applicant here, right?
Well, we're the applicant,
okay.
but there are some representatives of some of the sober living homes we have here in the city here that might be able to answer some of your questions as well.
Okay. I've got a couple when they come up.
So Councilmember Spencer has asked to be excused for a family event, and so appreciate him being here. This is a public hearing, so we will open it up for public comment. Anyone who would like to make a comment, please come forward. Keep your comments to 3 minutes and state your name and address when you come forward. Yes.
Hello, everyone. Name's Tyson Dixon with Renaissance Ranch Treatment Centers. We've got 2 homes.
Can you give us an address?
I'm just the primary owner. I've got my operator here, Drew, probably 71 West, 750 North.
Okay.
And with the other, there's another one as well. I'm not out here as much as I'd like to be. I'm over the entirety of our treatment and our services that we deliver. We have a couple residential facilities and outpatient treatment across the Wasatch Front. To answer the question in regards to the drug testing, that's a very important component to holding our client accountable. The rules for the sober living homes, at least that I own and that operate, which are 2 on the map, in regards to the testing, that's just a small piece of the support that they do get. The testing specifically is done supervised at our outpatient facilities and or at the homes themselves if there's any type of suspicion where that is observed, and then that is then couriered over to a laboratory to undergo quantitative and qualitative drug testing, which is done on a LCMS, basically a forensic type a machine to truly authentically identify if there are any illicit substances and or how much of illicit substances may be present in the system. Good thing is we have very low, very small amount of those tests that we do are actually positive, that our clients are actually using. And I completely understand and validate the primary concerns of the community in maintaining a safe community. That's everything. Our communities, our cities are founded upon, our neighborhoods are founded upon safety, and within the family unit, within the homes, binding together. And so I'd be rest assured too that we're not treating bad, we're treating sick people that want to get better and that are making those steps, not just in the home that they live in, but that also are actively engaged in a program of recovery with therapy, group therapy, activities, service, a conglomerate of things that are provided in our treatment facility. It is mandated that anybody lives in our treatment facilities or that lives in our sober living facilities, that they must attend the treatment in order to live in the homes themselves.
Thank you. One question before you go. How often does the state come down and do an audit and a physical visit?
Absolutely. I've got a couple, there was a couple not misunderstandings, but in regards to the state licensing. The state regulates very heavily these homes and on the treatment side. The state can pop in anytime if they hear any type of complaint or any type of, they can come in at any time and audit.
Do you have them come every year?
They do come every year to do a site visit, to do an audit of the requirements and so forth.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Appreciate it. Anyone else who would like to make a comment?
Hi, my name is Angela Schultz, and I'm with Papillon House. We're at 761 West, 150 North, here in Orem, and we appreciate you hearing us today. Yeah, I mean, I completely concur with everything that Mr. Earl has said. The city is, they do regulate very strictly. We actually have state inspections this Friday. We drug test at least twice a week. We actually do 2 types of drug testing. We both dip test, which are instant results, so that we know instantly whether or not that person, needs to have some consequences or leave the premises immediately. And then we also do lab testing that's taken by a courier. And with the city coming in, one of the things that I think needs to be said is that with an occupancy of 6 or less, the city regulations state that we only have to have supervision 5 days a week. Once we go to 7 and above, that supervision stipulation is 7 days a week. So we do have to increase our supervision, which we're happy to do. Most times we're there 7 days a week anyway, regardless. We're there when the clients need us. We're there on a consistent basis. We're there to support them. They gain a lot from the support and mentorship there in the program. One of the gals had mentioned, and she's here tonight, that last night there were about 4 girls in the house that were having a rough time. It was just kind of one of those days where things were just off for them. There were some transition going on in their lives personally, and there were at least 2 or 3 gals who were still, had a good day, and they were able to bring that positivity into the rest of the group and support. So there is a strength in numbers. There really is. We've, in the last 10 years, we actually operate another home in American Fork as well, and that one's been in operation for about 10 years. We've probably seen over 400 people, in that time frame, 400 women. And Tyson talked about communities. We are putting productive individuals back out in our communities. We're putting them to work. We're, reuniting families. These guys and gals, they do the hard work. They really do. They fight through every day to, to make themselves whole again, to make themselves whole with their family, and to make the restitution to their communities and become productive members. So, thank you.
One question I have for you: how long, on average, do your clients stay with you?
Glad you asked. I wanted to say that. So, average length of stay is anywhere from 6 to 10 months. We have had some people that have stayed 18 months to 2 years. So, it is about them taking ownership in this property, taking ownership in this home, and being, a part of the upkeep of all of the aspects of a home, so that they learn the responsibility and what that takes.
Thank you. Mark, do you have a question for her?
Yes, along that. Could you enlighten us in terms of if we have a sober living home in our neighborhood, what is effective for neighbors to do in part of the treatment program to be supportive and helpful, and to not be a negative influence on the progress of the individuals?
Be supportive, be accepting. Recognize that, again, as Tyson said, these are people with a disease. They have a sickness and they're trying to get well. They're not bad people trying to get good. They've got a lot to overcome, and any way that they can support. In our American Fork home, I have to tell you, there were some, when we moved in 10 years ago, there was some opposition in the onset, and we rent that property, and the owners of that property talked to the community a little bit on our behalf, and told one particular naysayer, what are your fears? Maybe you need to step in and see what it is you're struggling with. And lo and behold, this gal came in and she started doing service work, offering, transportation to job interviews and things like that, and recognized for herself that, she still had some unresolved things that were going on, dealing with a family member who had suffered from this disease. So, the healing reaches out into the community in that way. So if someone will, come in and offer that assistance and in the way of support, and even if it's just a kind word, it can be enough sometimes.
Good, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else who would like to make a comment?
You want my address, right?
Pardon me?
Ashley, you want my address?
Sure, and your name.
Ashley, 761 West, 150 North. I live at the Papillon House, and
And I'm sorry, what is your name?
Ashley
Ashley what?
Nielsen.
Okay.
I agree with everything that's been said tonight.
You're living at the Papillon House
I
right
am.
now? Okay.
Yeah. So I have just under a year clean. That's due to a lot of things, but definitely one of the biggest things is because of the sober living that I live in. The accountability that's there, like Angela was saying, with smaller groups of women in the house, or men, I'm sure, there's a lot less accountability. People tend to pair off and create sides. With more women, there is definitely strength and safety in numbers. There's more people to watch out for what's going on, more people to run ideas by. Last night, I was struggling. I had sisters to come home to, to help me through things. I've been in that house when there's been 3 women. It's definitely works better when there's more people there. Speaking on the community, our neighbors are amazing. They make us cookies. They let us play with our kids. I think we've shown that there are a lot of good things that we're trying to do with our lives. Drug testing, yeah, we have lab tests twice a week, random drug tests. If I felt like somebody was doing something, I have the choice to drug test them as well. I don't know, just having more people, I definitely think that, would make it so that you could pay less rent possibly with more people in the house, and more people would get, I'll pay to say there, but more people would get the chance to change their lives, and to be there. I don't really have much else to say.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else who would like to stand up?
My name is Drew Red. The address 267 West Center Street in Orem. And I'm grateful to be here. Thanks for having us. I am the executive director of the outpatient programs in Utah County. I'm also a recovering drug addict and alcoholic, and I'm so thankful for the opportunity that I had to recover. That spirit of healing is what we bring to the community here. On October 23rd, we had one of the residents who had relapsed and abruptly moved out of the sober living house. On October 31st, I got a message that morning that he had passed away and died in his parents' basement of a drug overdose. The likelihood of that individual, if he would have stayed in the sober living home, and his chances of living greatly increase. I know that people in my own situation, I lived in a sober living home, and I'm thankful that I had that opportunity, and the men who were there are thankful for their opportunity to live and to choose life over addiction and death. In contrast of that story, we have an individual right now in the house who 6 months ago, he had strong desires to die, to no longer be a part of his family or anything else. Today he is sober. He holds a job in Orem. He recently applied and got accepted for school at UVU, and he is getting his life back so he can give to the community. I was over at our home on 71 West, 750 North on Saturday, and we were barbecuing, and some of the neighbors came over and got some bratwurst from us and engaged in the barbecue. And these were neighbors who weren't really excited to have a sober living home in their community, but over the past few months, the men in our home have helped build balconies. They've raked leaves for the neighbors. If anybody's moving, they bring them in, go knock on the door and ensure that they're moving. And that they have help, and we offer service to the neighborhood. And as a result, they chose to come over and enjoy some barbecue with us on Saturday night. And so, my hope is that not just for financial reasons, not just for, to help the city but so that we can help people to live. And their chances of living and battling and surviving the disease of addiction is much greater than what it would be if they were in their own place or in their parents' basements. That is where people overdose and die, not so much in sober living homes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else care to speak?
Good evening. My name is Nicole Wimmer, and I'm here on behalf of Papillon House, 761 West, 150 North. I have been in recovery myself for about 7.5 years. 7.5 years ago, I walked into the doors of Papillon House. I lived in the American Fork House, and that was my first year of recovery. I was that woman. I actually lived in Orem most of the time that I've lived here in Utah, and I was that woman that people were scared to talk to when I was walking on the street or walking into a grocery store or just out in public in general. I was that woman that, people were in fear of. My family was scared of me. Everybody was pretty much scared of me. I didn't know how to get help, and I didn't know how to want help. I walked into the doors of Papillon House. It was a very structured environment, and that I wasn't used to. It was the first time in my life that anybody ever stuck their hand out to me and supported me through all the pain that I had been suffering through for most of my life. So I'm happy to say that Papillon had a huge part in saving my life today, and I have dedicated my life to helping other women come into recovery who were once broken just like I was. There isn't a broken woman standing here today. It's a mended woman. And, I take my time out on a daily basis to supervise the homes. I'm the regional supervisor for Papillon House, so I work with both homes and both house managers. I partake in the random drug testing, coming over to the house and making sure they have someone to talk to. I sit down and do sober coaching with them. I talk about my experience coming into recovery and hold their hand in their experiences. I have worked in the home when there has only been 3 women in the home, and there is more work when there is 3 women compared to 6 to 8 women. Drama seems to be a little bit higher. The phone calls are more extensive. 3 women, it's hard for them to sit around and just support each other. So I have more contact with 3 women in the house than I do with 6 or more women in the house. We just had some recent move-ins to the house, and we're a full house right now. We haven't reached 8 yet, but the camaraderie that happens within just a couple of days of all those women living in the house, it doesn't make my job any less easier, but it's a community that's easier to deal with, to teach them how to support one another, not how to live a selfish lifestyle anymore. And thank you for letting me talk.
Thank you. Councilor McDonald? Do you have a question here?
Before you sit down, ma'am, sorry. And this is for others, and you may be able to speak to this. Is an attendance at an NA or an NA or some internal house type of AA program required for living there?
Absolutely. We are a 12-step honored facility. When they come into the house, they are asked to have a sponsor within a week and to attend 90 fellowship meetings within the first 90 days.
Okay.
Yes, that's a huge part of our program.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to make a comment?
Hi, I'm Sherry Tomlinson. I live on 197 Ellis Drive in Orem. Interestingly enough, I'm not here on behalf of anybody. I came because it was a school assignment. Mr. Seastrand, I met you on the way here one time. Anyway, the whole reason I decided to say something is because I actually live in a neighborhood with a known drug house across the street. And as I listened to people, it started to worry me a little bit. And what worries me is where these homes are located. I think having them is fabulous. I would much rather have a home like theirs than to have a drug house across the street. And what scares me and worries me a little bit is having one of those homes on the same street as a drug house, because then it causes what I would think would be a problem. So I would like to see maybe some zoning on where these houses are located, and I think it's a fabulous thing. I've never had to deal personally and in my family with a drug addiction, but I know plenty of people that have dealt with that. And I think these are tremendous positive strides in the right direction. And I don't think having 8 people in that home is a bad thing if it's in the right location. And that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Councilmember Lentz, hold on a minute.
Sorry, Sherry.
Yeah.
Could you just clarify to make sure we understand, when you're referring to a drug home, do you mean one that's designated to help someone recover, or?
No. I mean people that
Okay.
I mean people that manufacture and sell small little amounts of drugs.
Steve, I'm not sure we have a drug zone set up in our current city, so that would be I'm wondering how we could regulate that when, obviously we don't want any drug homes in that sense in the city. But.
Well,
I think it's a reasonable concern, and I appreciate you pointing that out. I'm just wondering from the perspective of regulation how we could actually implement something like that.
I think the police department kind of knows which homes are homes that they need to kind of watch. And that's where I think if somebody wants a recovery type home in that neighborhood, that if they're getting licensure for that, that should be a consideration, as to look at where that home's located in direct correlation to where some of these homes, these known drug homes are. That's all.
So we can't zone anything for people to take drugs, number one. And number two is we can't zone, because of the Fair Housing Act, where these homes are at. I would like to make mention, thank you very much.
Sure.
I would like to make mention, I had a neighbor, a young lady, who had a problem and went through a treatment center here in Orem. And through taking that course of action, she changed her life and became a very happy and responsible citizen. So I appreciate what these homes are doing, and thank you to all the people who have spoken up on this. If there are no other comments, I'll go ahead and close the public portion of this hearing and bring it back to the council. Sam, do you have a comment?
And I'll just echo what the mayor said. Thank you so much for participating, and some really good thoughts were shared tonight. And I was just thinking back to several months ago, we had a zoning or an exception request, essentially, where the city ordinance required them to put a certain type of fence in between 2 different types of zones, and their request was they wanted to do a cheaper fence. And in my mind, the solution wasn't necessarily to grant that exception. The solution should have been, well, why do we have that ordinance in the first place? Should we address the ordinance and adjust that? So I think I might have been the lone nay vote on that 6-1 vote. But what I really like about this proposal is that we'd be trying to avoid that situation. So we're not saying yes to one person and then trying to justify saying no to the next person, even if they're making the same type of request. So it certainly has my support, and I think this is a great service that you offer to these people that are struggling with a number of things, and thank you for everything that you do to help them get back on that road to recovery. Thanks.
If there's no other comments from the council, and Sam, considering what you just said, would you care to make a motion?
Sure. Sorry, let me, that works.
Move.
I move that we amend section 22
City Council.
What's that?
Move that the City Council.
Okay. I move that the City Council amend section 2269D3 of the Orem City Code to increase the permitted number of sober living home SLU 1263 residents from 6 to 8.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Councilmember Luray?
Yay.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Okay, the ordinance passes. Thank you. We'll now go on to item number 13, which is a public hearing. This is a continued item on the PD4 Davies office building. This is an ordinance amending the Orem General Plan land use map by changing the designation from medium-density residential to community commercial, amending section 22-5-3A, and the zoning map of the Orem City Code by rezoning property from the R8 zone to the PD4 zone at 1000 East, 800 North, amending Section 22-19-1A and the appendix of the Orem City Code by enacting Appendix RR PD4 zone and amending Section 22-11-16 of the Orem City Code pertaining to development standards of the PD4 zone. Like I say, this is a continuation. It's our understanding that the permits and the agreements have not been finalized, so we're looking at continuing this to December 13th at 6 p.m., but this has been a public hearing, and I don't know if anybody came here this evening to speak to this request. Is anybody here to speak to this particular ordinance? If not, I will go ahead and accept a motion, unless there's any discussion from the council, to continue this to December 13th at 6 p.m.
So moved.
All right, I did just have one question for Jason. In the last public hearing, somebody had suggested of having that road go directly through, and they suggested maybe it goes up around the parking just to kind of slow down that traffic in a more natural way so that people aren't zooming out over toward that residential neighborhood. Is that something that is being considered as they're still working on that?
They did look at that, and the applicants and the shopping center, the owners all agree that it needs to be a more direct shot just because of the access, ease of access. It may sound good at the moment to do that, but in a year or so when people start using it, it'll be a deterrent, I think, and people will actually want a more straight shot after it gets improved. And so that's our traffic engineer and the owners have both agreed that it needs to be a straight shot.
Okay, and I would say just if we could have a more maybe detailed explanation of how that would impact traffic and parking if it was one way versus the other, that would be appreciated.
Could do that.
Okay, thanks.
So we have a motion on the table.
Second.
Is there a second? Okay. We'll go ahead and start with Councilmember Loray.
Aye.
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 Okay, this particular item is to be continued to December 13th at 6 p.m. City Council meeting. Item 14, are there any communication items? Okay, I would like to ask Chief Giles if he could come forward. We had an incident this morning at Mountain View High School, which I think many of you heard about. I'm wondering if you could report what occurred and then give us an update as to the status.
I give you a little bit of a limited report on it, somewhat what we did in the work session. A lot of the information we're putting out on our Facebook page for the Orem Police Department Facebook page. That's where we're trying to keep everything updated. This morning at 7:47, we actually received a call that there were several students being stabbed at Mountain View High School. Immediately, we were dispatched and had several officers. I'm like, I'm getting feedback from this. Are you guys?
You're good. Keep going.
Okay. So, as officers were responding, we actually had a school resource officer, a full-time school resource officer at the school. He was teaching or preparing to teach a law enforcement class upstairs in the school. The stabbing actually was taking place in the boys' locker room on the main floor, south end of the building. And so he immediately, upon hearing that, ran down to that area. Other officers were responding. But I have to give a shout out to some of the employees, and I don't know who they are yet. At some point, we'll find out exactly who they are. But some of the staff at the high school had actually placed themselves in harm's way just to protect other students in that school. In total, the 16-year-old male, the 16-year-old suspect had stabbed 5 different people. One thing that I want to clarify, though, a lot of speculation has gone out as to whether there was bullying involved, whether it was racially motivated or whatever the other cases may be. And we put out a press release not long ago on the Facebook page to kind of clarify some of that. After interviewing all of the witnesses, the victims, as well as the suspect himself and his parents as well, we know that this was not a bullying incident. This was not a retaliatory incident. It was not racially motivated. And I can't really get into much more about what the motive may have been. But I can say that none of the victims of the stabbing did anything to the suspect to cause him to choose them. It was a situation in which they were in the unfortunate close proximity to the suspect when this all started. And I'm sure that we'll be able to clarify that a little bit more as time goes by and as we find a little bit more out. We still have some search warrants outstanding that we're dealing with for some items and so forth. And I know that's kind of vague information, but unfortunately that's part of the way our job goes in the initial stages of an investigation. I did meet with all of the victims and their families today. They are all in fairly good spirit for what happened. I mean, obviously they've been through a tragedy that for some is very life-changing. Also met with the parents of the suspect, who are also in shock and also a life-changing situation for them. Right now, if I can recall all correctly, we have 2 that are still listed in a critical but stable condition, 1 in a serious condition, and 1 in fair condition, which may already have been released from the hospital. I'm not sure. Haven't had an update in a few hours. And then everyone else has already been released from the hospital and are recovering at home. And so, at this point, everybody did their jobs well. From the Orem Police Department, the response of all of the officers, I was very proud of all of them, to dispatch, and again, to the fire department, their personnel, and then, like I say, the staff at Mountain View High School was great working with them today. And again, I don't know who they were that put themselves in harm's way. I'm sure one of my guys do know that, and we'll find that out at some point and maybe be able to recognize them better. So.
Well, thank you, Chief Giles, and for the police department, and thank you to Chief Gurney and for the fire department, and appreciate all the effort that has gone forth to work on this situation and to help to calm the situation. We very much appreciate our police and fire and for the great work you do. So
thank you very much.
Councilman McDonald, did you have a comment? No. Okay. All right. If there's nothing else, I would like to entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're officially adjourned. Thank you. The comments. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Well, good night.
No explosions.